And joining us on the line right now is Sean Trende from Real Clear Politics. We thought a good day to have him in because, look, numbers, are complicated things, and you need somebody who really knows how to crunch the numbers and mine the data. And Sean is like one of the best in Washington at that. We've got a couple of things we want to talk about right off the bat. First of all, there were primary elections last night, specifically a lot of attention paid on that Senate race in North Carolina and that race with Clay Aiken, the Democratic primary in North Carolina. What's your thought of it there?
Well, Tom Tillis is the Speaker of the North Carolina House of Representatives. He's kind of the establishment choice for the Senate race. A lot of people thought that maybe he would get upset by a Tea Party challenge, but he cleared the 40% mark, which is what you need to win the nomination in North Carolina with some room to spare. And Clay Aiken, on the other hand, Democratic candidate for a House seat in North Carolina's 2nd District, despite near universal name recognition and a ton of money, he's struggling right now. There's going to be a recount and a canvass, but he's barely ahead right now.
We have about 350 votes, something like that.
Yeah, it's very close.
The other thing we wanted to bring you in on to talk about is all of these polls that we've been seeing of late. There was especially a very interesting Pew poll that talked about the state of the electorate, where their mind is, and the overall upshot of it is that the coming midterm elections are beginning to look really, really good for Republicans. I mean, we expect that midterm elections, especially in the second term of a presidency, that the party out of power is going to do well. But this is different, don't you think?
Yeah, right now the polls are showing the president in worse shape than he was at this point in 2010. And the key difference, I think, for people to bear in mind is that 2010 was a really bad Senate playing field for Republicans. It was fought on blue territory, and they still picked up 6 seats. This is fought in very, very red territory. So if this turns into a year like 2010, there is very little doubt that they'll take back the Senate.
Sean Trende, I read with great interest your article yesterday. The headline was "The Tea Party Revisited," and there's this narrative out there that I'm seeing quite a bit in the media that Republicans really dodged a bullet this time around in these primaries, and they've got electable, more establishment Republicans running instead of those crazy, unelectable Tea Party candidates. Is there any truth to that narrative, and what is the status of the Tea Party branding?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is some truth to that narrative. You have a candidate like Christine O'Donnell, who I think pretty clearly, the Tea Party shot the ball into the wrong goal there. But some of the candidates that get blamed with losses, I mean, Todd Aiken wasn't even a Tea Party candidate. The Tea Party, major Tea Party players had split between Sarah Seelman and John Brunner. In Nevada, Sharon Angle did lose as a Tea Party candidate, but I'm pretty sure that all of the candidates that were running that year would have lost to Reed because none of them were particularly great shakes. You also have Tea Party successes you have to look at, like Marco Rubio and Pat Toomey and Ron Johnson in Wisconsin and so forth.
And Rand Paul and Senator Lee, and they go on and on.
Exactly. So the Tea Party giveth and the Tea Party taketh away. Tom Tillis has problems. He's the face of an unpopular North Carolina legislature. I'm not convinced he's going to win. But I think that he's probably a better candidate than the other Republicans he was running against. I just don't think he's such a better candidate, so much of a better candidate as people are making him out to be.
Well, I mean, you talk about Tom Tillis having a hard time going up against Kay Hagan. That's one of the races that Republicans would love to win, and they need, 6 seats to take back control of the Senate. The Washington Post did an analysis the other day that said that there's an 82% chance that Republicans will take back the Senate. So when you look at it, are you that optimistic, or do you see real problems?
It's funny. I did a model myself back in, I think, February that said about 80% chance for the Republicans. I think unless things really turn around for the Democrats in terms of the economy and whatnot, I think they're in real trouble in the Senate.
Well, let me ask you, what Republicans have a tradition of screwing up and grabbing defeat out of the jaws of victory from time to time. What could mess it up for them?
Something would have to happen that really shoots the president's job approval upward. They would have to nominate some really unacceptable candidates in places like Alaska. If Joe Miller were the nominee, I think he'd have real problems. But maybe the Health Care Act becomes insanely popular all of a sudden. Really, I think it's just the Democrats are in a lot of trouble in the Senate right now. They're going to have to catch some lucky breaks.
Sean Trende, let's bring it home here to Virginia. The Republicans still need to have a convention to choose their nominee, but the polls suggest that Ed Gillespie will be that man. There was a time when Senator Warner looked like an inevitable re-election candidate. In fact, many people talked about him potentially for a national ticket. Is he going to have his hands full with Ed Gillespie?
I think he will. I think that Gillespie. I think that Warner is still very much the favorite there. But Gillespie's going to raise a ton of money. I think Warner's popularity is a little bit shallower than people think, and once he starts getting hit hard with negative ads, which he hasn't been hit hard with in over a decade, I think the race will tighten somewhat. But I think Warner's still the favorite.
All right, and what about in Maryland? We have a large amount of listeners in Virginia and Maryland, and many Republicans in Maryland just sort of feel like, oh, there's not a whole lot of hope here.
But on the other side of that equation, we just saw a poll that said that 47% of Marylanders would leave the state if they could.
That would be the Republicans, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think, Sean?
Well, 46% of Maryland isn't Republican.
That's true. There's got to be a few Democrats in there.
Yeah. Look, the Obamacare exchange in Maryland has been a mess, and that's being generous. The Republican candidates, they have a pretty tight field in their gubernatorial. They have some quality candidates in their gubernatorial field. I would never go out, not never, but I would be hesitant to go out on a limb and predict a Republican victory. But I think they're going to have. I think they'll have credible candidates and a credible chance.
All right.
30-40%.
All right. Well, Sean Trende, thank you so much. We always appreciate your assessment.
Thanks for having me.